people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the co-main event of yesterday's PBC on Amazon show, Charlo versus Cornflake Lamanna, a listless Cornflake Lamanna that didn't put forward anything semblant of a game plan. I have it on very good authority that they didn't sell very many, if any, tickets for this show. Most of them they gave away. This co-main event was tantamount to a movie that's so bad, you have to finish it. You have to see it through. This wasn't a fight. A very uninspired Jamal Charlo that is doing little more than just going through the motions against a listless opponent conjured up to give him an easy one, an easy win. Didn't Lara stop this guy in like one round? Jamal Charlo needed 6, and being honest, it wasn't even Jamal that stopped Cornflake Lamanna. It was the referee. It was Mark Nelson. Jamal Charlo did enough to get in with a couple of punches here and there, catching Cornflake Lamanna off balance due to his poor defense and his poor footwork. There were even moments where, for whatever reason, Cornflake is actually showboating. Very peculiar, because he was so obviously losing the fight, but he still made time to play to the crowd. There's not a lot to break down here. I'm in awe of how poor, how bad this fight was, and that the PBC had the audacity to make it the co-main event to the main event. The main event wasn't half bad, but this was just sad. And it's amazing how so many of the PBC's core supporters like to be hypercritical of Turkey LL Chic and Matchroom and Top Rank. What shows what other promoters put together while promoting this schlock, this garbage, because that's what Charlo versus Lamanna was. That was not a fight. That was a glorified sparring session. That was a desperate effort to get Charlo active again, get him an easy win, and set him up for something bigger. After over 500 days of inactivity, over a year, well over that, that's all this was. This is something that should have been buried on an undercard, not in a co-main event, but the PBC have no quality control, no standards, and that's nothing new. So former champion Jamal Charlo advances to a pro record of 34-0 now, I think he is. That he's still an unbeaten fighter after all these years is amazing. A career that has no momentum, no direction, no traction, no sense of stability. Whatever demons Jamal Charlo has been battling all these years have taken the air out of the tires for the fighter. I don't even want to see him fight anymore. I don't think he wants to fight anymore. No surprises in yesterday's co-main event. Now, in the main event that actually was entertaining, the Resendiz versus Plant fight, where the big upset happened. It's another one for the books. Another fight that characterizes why pressure fighters can be a pure boxer's nightmare. That pressure fighters, they don't get the plaudit and the praise that the slicksters do. The movers and the jabbers and the thinkers, but a lot of the time, the pressure guys wear them out. The pressure guys wear them down with their straightforward approach. It's not that nuanced. It's in no way subtle. But it works. And I ain't no Monday morning quarterback. If you caught any of my videos in reference to this main event, I said it time and time again. Caleb might start off all right, but he has a tendency to fade after the midway point. And if he does against Resendiz, things could get really bad, really fast. It didn't even take that long. I want to say that after about 2 to 3 rounds, Resendiz had already settled into the fight, found his groove, and had Caleb Plant under a lot of pressure. It didn't take long. I want to say that I had it about 3 rounds to 3 after 6 rounds, where Resendiz was already starting to take over at the midway point. It didn't take long. I want to say that very early in the fight, Resendiz was already backing off Caleb Plant and putting him on the ropes, putting him under pressure. Caleb Plant didn't have the pop, the power to keep him off. Resendiz jabbing his way in, double jab here and there, followed by backhands over the top that connected. Great left hooks. He got in with the left hook quite a few times. Caleb Plant is supposed to be a defensive fighter, a defensively minded fighter, but his defense has never been the best. Never been all that effective fighting out of that Philly shell. Still gets hit, still gets marked up. Got marked up yesterday at the hands of Resendiz, who connected with several big left hooks that noticeably rattled Caleb Plant's cage, as well as body shots, body punches that we all know are notoriously difficult to recover from. So you're talking about a fighter that already has gas tank issues, a fighter who already starts to slow down after the midway point, and that's in fights that he's actually winning. So just imagine in a fight that he's losing. I'd say that for 36 minutes, Resendiz ragdolled Caleb Plant worse than David Benavidez did. What made it worse? In the first half of the David Benavidez fight, you could argue that Caleb won at least 5 rounds of the first 6. That was not the case with Resendiz yesterday. After 6 rounds, I had it tied 3-3, and every round after that became more difficult and dangerous and punishing for Caleb Plant.
For the former champion.
There's not a lot of subtlety to this fight, not a lot of nuance. Caleb could not handle the pressure from Resendiz, the way so many pure boxers can't handle the pressure from pressure fighters. And that's really all there is to it.
In the pocket.
Know what pressure fighters like to do? They like to bust through the front door, crash the pocket, crowd that pure boxer. In those moments, we saw a bit of dirty boxing from Caleb Plant, couple of punches that sailed a bit low, though at the same time, Resendiz responded with some dirty boxing of his own.
Tried to headbutt Caleb Plant quite a few times in the clinch. Caleb Plant, who resorted to hitting and holding and clinching.
Wrestling, because it was becoming increasingly difficult to get away from Resendiz. Those legs were getting slow and sluggish. They were getting heavy, at which point Caleb elected to smother. Try to. Just fall in and try to tie the guy up. Don't even let him throw, but
It didn't work. Resendiz was still getting the better of Caleb Plant deep in the pocket. Body shots, short left hooks around the side.
Resendiz was the noticeably shorter, stumpier, stockier fighter of the two. Remember that this guy used to campaign at 160.
He's not a big guy. Noticeably shorter arms than Caleb Plant's, which serviced him in the pocket, because in the pocket, it's the guy with the shorter arms that has the advantage, and that guy was Resendiz.
Things going from bad to worse towards the tail end of the fight as a big cut opened up over Caleb Plant's right eye. I saw Boxing Insider Rick Lacia react to the fight by saying, many have asked if Caleb Plant is shot. Plant's not completely shot, but he's clearly on the back nine, as there's definitely slippage in multiple categories. Slower hands, he was getting hit more often than in prior fights, he lost his balance many times, and stamina was gone early. All signs of slippage. Definitely boxing's version of the back nine for now.
Is that the way it is?
No, I don't necessarily agree with that, because even before Caleb Plant suffered losses to David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez before him, he had gas tank issues.
That's not new. That's not a byproduct of wear and tear in time. He was always that way. He was always fading down the stretch, even in fights that he's winning, let alone a fight that he's losing.
I would chalk it up to styles more than Caleb Plant being on the back nine. I would chalk it up to a persistent pressure fighter who's not going to leave you alone, and typically, against pure boxers,
Pressure guys win. Resendiz was to Caleb Plant what Roman Villa was to Rashidi Ellis.
that's all it was. In the American boxing scene, more so than some others, pressure fighters don't get as much credit as they should. Acknowledgement that being in there with a guy who's going to try to mow you down for 36 minutes, it's not easy. It's not the most nuanced approach,
It's not always the most pretty.
or the most subtle, but that doesn't make it any less difficult. Being in there with a guy who's not going to go away, he's going to try to chase you, mow you down for all 36 minutes of a 12-round fight, and you need certain ingredients to beat a guy like that.
Caleb didn't have them.
In the American boxing scene, they spend more time praising the sugarfoot fighters and the cerebral guys, as if that's all there is to it, as if that's the only way to fight a fight, overlooking
As if that's the failsafe.
guys like Resendiz, that they're not the most cerebral, they're a lot more simple and a lot more direct, but it works.
Another feather in the cap of veteran trainer Manny Robles, who prepared Resendiz for this fight. I figured between this guy's style and Manny,
What improvements he might start to make under the watchful eye of Manny Robles, Caleb is in for a long night. They're calling this a big upset. I don't know about big.
It's definitely an upset.
So the proverbial monkey wrench has been thrown in what was to be the Plant versus Charlo showdown. This is what Jermall Charlo had to say about it afterwards.
Caleb Plant dropped the ball. He looked out of shape. He looked a little. He couldn't have fought me tonight. Yeah, I wish it would have happened, to answer your question, but you know, I'm not here to bash nobody, talk down on nobody, but yeah, Caleb Plant dropped the ball on this one. I want my leg back. I still want my leg back. I don't care if he got the belt or not. We can make a belt. They can make a belt. Somebody make a belt. I want my leg back. Right.
I disagree with all of that. I happen to think that Caleb probably would have still beat Jermall Charlo because Jermall's got a different style to Resendiz. He's not a volume guy like Resendiz, not persistent, not a pressure fighter.
And not the least bit inspired.
Let's not pretend that he went in there and blasted Cornflake out of there because he didn't. But let's also not pretend that Plant versus Charlo was in any way a hot ticket. Before yesterday's fight, I wasn't hyped to see it, and I'm not hyped to see it now. So when Jermall says that he wants his lick back, I don't care.
How grade school is it to put together an entire show based on an altercation in a parking lot about 2 years ago?
How infantile that even before Caleb loses in lopsided fashion to Resendiz, this was not a good fight to put together to begin with. It's unfortunate for Caleb because he's one of the few PBC fighters that actually shows gumption and character. He's one of the few guys they've got that you can sometimes get behind, sometimes root for, because he's a stand-up guy, more or less.
But his boxing is his boxing, and he is what he is.
Caleb, congrats on a hard-fought fight. You know, throughout the week, when you spoke of Resendiz, you talked about stepping on him. Did you, in retrospect, underestimate or overlook him at all in this fight?
No, I knew it would be a tough fight, and that's one thing, you know, people try to say that about Charlo as well. And one thing, you know, maybe the boxing media, but for sure the boxing fans are going to have to start understanding is it's not a popularity contest. So just because a man doesn't have 1 million followers or isn't always in the limelight doesn't mean that he's not a good fighter. And I knew Resendiz was going to be a tough fight. I knew what was on my hands, and you know, I didn't overlook him. Brad, my dad, Rich, Tony, you know, none of us overlooked him. We knew it was going to be a tough fight. And that's what I'm in the business of, you know, is taking those fights that are going to push me, taking the fights that are going to give me good experience that I can take into, you know, the next fight. But no, I definitely didn't overlook him. I knew it was going to be a tough fight.
So now there is talk of a Caleb Plant versus Resendiz rematch that I think is counterintuitive. I think is a waste of time. We often talk about the PBC's need for new blood and a fresher stable, that here in 2025, they're still trying to sell you Pacquiao fights, they're still trying to sell you the Charlo brothers, Caleb Plant.
This would be tantamount to Top Rank still trying to sell you Ray Beltran.
The PBC needs to update their roster, update their stable. They had a halfway decent Cuban guy on the undercard, middleweight. Now, even though Resendiz has 1 or 2 losses, that should not stop them from investing in him. Because here you have a Mexican fighter with a fan-friendly style coming off of a career-best win and a big upset, and you need to harness that momentum, cultivate it, to crown a new star. Instead of focusing on a Caleb Plant rematch and bogging Resendiz down with that, why don't you let him move into that Charlo fight? Charlo is still unbeaten. He's still on drugs.
Still depressed.
Feed him to Resendiz. In order to make an omelet, you've got to crack a couple of eggs. In order to crown a star, well, somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Jermall is in his mid-30s. Whatever he was going to do in boxing, he must have done it already.
What, you're still trying to turn this guy into a pay-per-view star? A pay-per-view attraction? It's not gonna happen.
I noticed during the Plant versus Resendiz fight how many Mexican fans were in the crowd, how many Mexican flags were there. You gotta capitalize on that. I mean, at some point you've got to stop coddling these fighters and accommodating them and realize that this is a business after all. Plant's a good guy, nothing against him, but we as the boxing community don't need a rematch. We don't need to be bogged down by that, and Resendiz doesn't need that. He should be allowed to progress. The opportunities like this one only exist in small pockets, small moments in time, and you have to capitalize on it now. Resendiz versus Charlo will move the needle more than a Plant rematch, and as far as Caleb, Put him on the undercard. Let him bounce back with somebody. Then let him fight the winner.
Boxing in America is stagnant and stifled.
How many fights on the American boxing schedule actually get you excited and actually make you wonder? What they're putting together is tantamount to just going through the motions. There's no intrigue. But Resendiz versus Charlo, I can see some people going with Charlo to win that fight, and I can see that many more going with Resendiz because he's fresher and he's younger and more motivated, not battling demons, coming off a career best win.
Caleb Plant.
I saw after the fight Edgar Berlanga's immediate reaction to Caleb Plant's lopsided loss to Resendiz, and in the classless fashion that you would expect, Edgar starts co-opting Resendiz's win, starts trying to make it about himself. Buddy, if you like your chances that much, you would have fought him.
If you were so confident that Caleb ain't no good and he sucks, then that would have been you in there with him.
Too many American fighters are far too comfortable co-opting the next man's victory, the next man's win. That wasn't you in there yesterday. It doesn't make you look good. It doesn't make you look better that Caleb lost and Resendiz won, because are you gonna fight Resendiz?
Mexico versus Puerto Rico, you can sell that.
Fights are being fought, fighters are winning and fighters are losing. But who's the best fighter that Edgar ever beat? Who's the best fighter that Edgar ever fought? The only reason that he only has one loss in the column is because of how protected he is most of the time.
Look at the last guy that he fought. Where the hell did they find him?
Caleb Plant has his drawbacks, but he's got more gumption in his pinky than Edgar Berlanga's ever had.
I'm hoping that Hamza Shabazz does us all a favor and knocks this guy's block off.
Now moving forward, whatever momentum Plant versus Charlo may have had, minuscule or otherwise, there's no need to keep building towards that. Jamal won his fight yesterday, and Resendiz won his, so ideally, these are the two fighters that need to be fighting. I don't know how Charlo feels about that.
He said he still wants to fight Caleb.
But does the paying public want to see that? That's who you're catering to. That's who you're making these fights for and hoping that they take them in. Does the paying public still have an appetite for Plant versus Charlo? Did they ever?
Maybe that's been the PBC's problem all this time. You spend so much of it coddling your fighters, it's the audience you're supposed to be catering to and satisfying.
To survive and stay afloat, they have to usher in a new era of fighters. They have to update their roster.
We'll see what they do. We'll see if they wise up.
Reflections.
Whenever an upset happens, big or small, like yesterday's, it's actually good for the sport of boxing. That air of spontaneity, the unexpected taking place, it reminds people that this is still a sport.
While some portion of it may seem scripted and preordained,
Upsets remind us that anything can happen.
upsets have a way of keeping things fresh and exciting. So what might be bad news for Caleb Plant is good news for the sport of boxing in its own way.
Keeps things fresh, shakes things up. On Friday, on a Golden Boy promotion show, Bektemir Melenkuziev won a WBA eliminator, and yesterday Resendiz won a secondary version of a WBA title. I wouldn't mind seeing a fight between them.
It's time for some new ideas.